Before I begin, I wanted to mention that I've changed the name of the podcast to Exploring the Parsha. My sincere hope is to provide chizuk and inspiration, to lead you on an exciting journey to discover the beauty of the Torah's timeless wisdom, and to help you to navigate life's challenges by delving deeply into the weekly Parsha and on occasion Yom Tovim. This is a special podcast in honor of Chanuka. Chazal asked the following question, Esther min Torah Menayim. Where do we see a remez, a hint to Esther in the Chumash? As we know, the nisa of Purim, the miracle of Purim, came through Esther. So Chazal want to know, where is that hinted to in the Torah? The Vilna Gaon asks a kasha in this Gemara. He doesn't understand. Why single out Esther more than other tzaddikim? There were other tzaddikim who Hashem made a nes come through. What was special about Esther? And the Vilna Gaon answers that Purim was even greater than Chanuka. Why? Because Chanuka occurred in Eretz Yisrael during the times of the Beis Hamikdash. And therefore, to have a nes, to have a miracle, when there was already Gilui Shechina, when Hashem's presence was already felt, wasn't the same level as Purim, when the Yidden were in Gullus. That being the case, we have a Rambam, which is very difficult to understand. The Rambam says at the end of Hilchas Chanukah, Mitzvahs ner Chanukah, mitzvah chaviva hi ad ma'od. The mitzvah ner Chanukah, the light of Chanukah Menorah, is a mitzvah chaviva, is a very, very much desired and beloved mitzvah by the Jewish people. We could ask a question on the Rambam, based on the Vilna Gaon's understanding that Purim was even a greater nes than Chanukah. So why is this mitzvah chaviva amod? Why is the dearness of this mitzvah specifically by Chanukah, not by Purim? We find nothing similar in the Rambam when it comes to Kriyas Megillah, which is the exposition of the nes of Purim. Why by Chanukah if Purim was even a greater nes? Perhaps we could understand the answer through the lens of another Rambam. Chazal tell us in Gemara and Shabbos there's such a thing as a birkas roya. What's a birkas roya? We know about the bracha a person makes when he's madlik the ner, when he lights the ner as Chanukah. But there's another bracha. If he sees the ner as Chanukah, he didn't light it, he sees it. If he sees the ner as Chanukah, as Rashi explains, before he's lit his own menorah, or for some reason he won't be able to light a menorah that night, he makes this bracha on seeing the ner as Chanukah. But the Rambam understands the Gemara slightly differently. He understands kol haroya, anyone who sees it, meaning, as Lechem Mishnah explains, anyone who sees the ner as Chanukah, even the person who will have the menorah lit for him later on that night, even he makes a bracha on seeing the ner as Chanukah. This is somewhat perplexing. If the mitzvah is parsumi nisa, to light the menorah, to be able to show the world the shvach v'hodah, the praise to Hashem, so then what does it have to do with seeing the menorah? The mitzvah is to light the menorah, not see the neirus. What could the Rambam mean that you make a bracha when you see the neirus, even if you will have the mitzvah hadlaka? It seems to the Rambam that there are two dimensions of neirus Chanukah. There's the external dimension of parsumi nisa, when we're madlik the ner, when we light the menorah, we are showing the world, as I mentioned, the greatness of the nes, the greatness of the miracle. That dimension of neirus Chanukah we're very familiar with. But the Rambam seems to be alluding to another dimension, something perhaps we're not as familiar with. And that is experiencing the light of the neirus. When a person sees the light of the ner, that sensory experience of seeing the light of the ner, which has nothing to do with parsumi nisa per se, but it's a personal experience, it seems that that is worthy of a bracha as well. There's something to be recognized there. How do we understand this? How do we understand that seeing the ner as Chanukah, the light of the menorah, is enough to require a bracha, even though a person is not being parsumi nisa? He's not publicizing the nes. Well, for that we need to understand what the ner, what the light of the menorah is. As we know, in the Beis Hamikdash there was the menorah, and that menorah was the keli, was the vessel in the Beis Hamikdash which represented Torah. And then, when these neros were lit, when the lights of the menorah were lit, that was the light of Torah. As it says in the pasuk, "La Yehudim Haisa Oira Haisa Oira, Chazal say, Haisa Oira zu Torah. The Sfas Emes explains, why didn't it say Hayehudim Haisa Torah or V'simcha V'sasam V'yikar? Because the pshat, the meaning of Torah is or, and in that menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, that was the or. That's the keli of Torah because it's or, because it's light. What's our menorah? So our menorah, as Rav Hutner Zatzal explains, is really the only remaining vessel, the only remaining keli from the Beis Hamikdash that we still have a connection to. And we have that connection every Chanukah when we light a Chanukah menorah. This menorah is a hemshech, it's a continuation. It's connected to the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash. Just like the Beis Hamikdash, it was or of Torah, so too the or of our menorah is the or of Torah. So now we can understand a little bit better. Because now when we're looking at the menorah, when we're looking at the Neris Chanukah, and we see the or, our eyes are a window into our soul, to our neshama, to experience that light. The Rambam is alluding to the fact that beyond publicizing the nes, the inyan of menorah, of Neris Chanukah, is to experience the light, to experience the or of Torah. The Rambam is alluding to an internal seeing. To mefarsim the nes is an external seeing. The world should see, the world should be lit up by a menorah. But the Rambam, the Birkas Haroya, is referring to an internal seeing. Perhaps we can understand this a little better with a story. I once was speaking to a young man who was about tshuva. He told me the following story. He said when he was in high school, he took Spanish, and he was so fluent in Spanish that he was able to read novels in Spanish. This story happened maybe 45, 50 years ago. And there was a very famous Spanish author who was coming to a university near his home. His name was Juan Luis Borges. And he was going to give a lecture. He was a famous novelist, a famous writer from Spain. And all the high school students were going to sit in the lecture because they understood Spanish. They would know what he's talking about. And at the beginning of his speech, this Mr. Borges said that, I'm blind. But you know more? I didn't begin to see until I became blind. What was he saying? It's about an internal seeing. And I was told, someone once said in the drasha, that a blind person, it's the only person that Chazal give a special term to, they call him Sagi Nohar. What does Sagi Nohar mean? Enough of that, with that light. That light's enough. The same idea. That for a blind person who can't see externally, he can see internally. And that light's enough because that's the ikr light. That's the main light, is to see inside. So now we can understand this Rambam a little bit better. What the chavivus mitzvah is of Chanukah. It's very different than Purim. Because it's not only about the nes. It was about the nes exclusively. As we said before, a person, when he reads the Megillah, that's chavivus mitzvahs as well. But the Ram doesn't say that. It's only by Chanukah. Why? Because beyond, or in addition to, the parsumi nisa, publicizing the nes, is the internal seeing of Torah, of or inside of our own being. As was the world of the Chashmonoim, is our world as well. The world of the Chashmonoim, of the Greek culture, the Yevonim, was a world of darkness, a world of impurity. And now, when we light a menorah with Shem and Zayis Torah, with pure oil, and that light of the menorah penetrates inside of us. So that darkness and impurity, which unfortunately has lodged itself inside of us through our experience in life, has a moment of reprieve when the light of the or of Torah, of the menorah, penetrates. And it has the capacity to transform us. Because now when we focus on that light, we focus on the or of Torah, we focus on the menorah, and it becomes lodged inside our own being, inside our panim, then Chanukah has the capacity to change us. If we'll just focus on that light. The chavivus mitzvah the Rambam speaking about is the chavivus of that experience of having the or inside of ourselves. So when you sit by the menorah, take a moment or two to focus on the light and let that light penetrate you. It's the light of Torah. I wish everyone a lichtach Chanukah. May you all be zoiche to see the light.